Stand by for a quick intro. Welcome back to another episode of the Strongman Winner Circle podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Camby. This is episode 57 with Graham Hicks. Recently crowned the champion of the World Deadlift Championships in Wales, he pulled 470 kilos or 1,036 for the win. The former British Strongest Man and 7-time World Strongest Man competitor joins the show to talk all things strongman, lifting, and more. So tune in to listen to everybody's favorite static monster on today's show. And welcome to the show, Graham. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. You know, like I said, it's never an easy thing for me to organise, but we're here and we're going to do this. So hopefully my kids won't knock the door down too soon. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So yeah, great to get you kind of speaking in front of the community and all. I hope you didn't mind the intro. A lot of static lifts, but of course, for reference, Graham is also a great mover and great at other events too. But of course, I wanted to start off with the.
I used to be.
A little thicker. But I wanted to start off with the show and talking about the deadlift championships. But how are you feeling 11 days out after the show?
It's quite surprised me actually. I felt like quite fresh on the Monday, so I went to the gym to train, and I quite realised that how flawed I was. My central nervous system was completely fried, and then so sod's law. My daughter was first day at school. I have 3 kids, and she brought a sickness bug home, and obviously I got it by Wednesday, which we talked about. So that knocked me off my tracks again for 2 days. So it's been a bit rough, really. I haven't really got into my rhythm with training properly. The kids are back at school. Just trying to get going and getting, because obviously I signed up for Glasgow and I haven't trained any strongman since Worlds. So March, April time. So I am questioning whether this was a wise choice, but you know, when these competitions come thick and fast, it's what we do, it's what we love, and you know, I want to just go and get stuck in and don't really worry about too much about where I come. Just go and enjoy myself.
Absolutely. How's the hamstring feeling? Of course, I saw on one of your YouTube videos that you had a little bruising. Was that more muscle belly, right?
It was a lot worse than I let on. I mean, I didn't actually get to see anybody who specialises in injuries, but obviously I was getting massage and I was doing red light therapy. I was doing hot and cold. I was going for ozone treatment, and I did it 18 days before the show. And 8 days before the show, I tried to pull 270 kilos, and I couldn't do it. Just couldn't get in position because I couldn't really bend over properly. So after the show, I still have. It's still not right. Weirdly enough, I mean, I can't quite fathom how it's still not right, but I nearly pulled the world record. Well, I say nearly, you know, like obviously you know how these things work, but I had a good go at it with 505 with basically an injured hamstring. So, but yeah, it's still bothering me. It's still not 100%.
All right. Well, of course, it's one of the many facets that we have to deal kind of in the sport of strongman. But let's talk a little bit about your kind of training leading up to the show. Did most of your training go to plan? I know, of course, you just mentioned, of course, the last 2 weeks might have been a little rough, but for the most part, did most of the training go kind of what you expected to be?
Yeah. So we pretty much planned like a 16-week plan. And I hit everything. I think pretty much every time I trained, I made everything look comfortable, and that was the goal. Hit them numbers, hit them sets, leave the gym thinking, yeah, I can do more. It was comfortable. And obviously, over the 16 weeks, it got heavier and heavier and heavier.
Mm-hmm.
And my final pull was supposed to be 470, which probably would have put my head in a better place more than my body. And I don't know if you actually saw my 440 that I did on the YouTube video, but you could just see my feet as I lock out, slide out. And that's all that did my hamstring. It wasn't the actual deadlift. I finished the lift. It was the sliding of my socks that I tore my hamstring on. So it's a bit of I'm a 13 years in strongman, and I would say I've never come across that happen to me before. So
What was the
we're
floor? Was
always
the
still
floor?
learning. It's just
Was the
unfortunate. It was.
I was gonna say, was the floor slick, or was it
Sorry, I
just
didn't hear you then.
was the floor slick in terms of this?
Yeah, I mean my platforms in the gym are just normal wood, and I like to deadlift in Vibrams, which is them funny toe deadlift shoes. But I started to get holes in them, and I'm quite like that. I do that with my trainers. I wear them out, and then my wife would be like, "Right, I'm buying you some new trainers or some new shoes." So this was the case. I'd bought some new ones, but they were really, really stiff. So I thought I'll walk around, when I'm walking the kids to school, when I'm out of the house, I'll wear them in. And for 2 weeks, I'll just wear deadlift socks, which are supposed to have grip underneath. But it didn't really work out that way. I noticed the week before I was having issues with sliding, and I should probably have took that as a warning sign. The week after, obviously, it was a big, heavy one, and they slid, and I injured myself. So there's nothing really I could have changed about it. The shoes weren't really ready. It's just the way things panned out. But it forced me to rest as well. So, I moved 400 faster than I've ever moved before. I pulled 430 faster, pulled 400 in the gym before. So, the rest did me good. I just would like to have seen where I could have pushed it had I not hurt myself.
Sure. But you were the closest to actually hitting 505. This is like bringing it up to your knees. In the fact that you got it that close, does it give you confidence that in the future you might be able to hit that record? Because I imagine some point in your career you might have failed to lift and came back, trained, and came back and hit and smashed that particular weight. So do you feel that since you actually got that to your knees, the next time you go after it, you might be able to smash the record?
It's really weird because like max deadlift's like a whole new thing to me. I mean, last year I pulled 1,000 pounds, and that was the first time I pulled max deadlift for 8 years in a show.
Oh, interesting.
And previous to that, my best was 400, which I know I could do more than that, but I'd never pushed it. So I've never actually failed a lift in training and in a show. So it put a rocket up my bum really, because I've like come to realize, hell, I can pull that, and like yourself, if you understand how biomechanics work, the way I'm built, below my knee to above my knee is where I need my hamstrings. So, if my hamstrings are stronger, then I'll get that lift because the power off the floor was there. I just think that my hamstrings weren't strong enough on the day.
Oh, interesting. Now, in hindsight, would you have changed much, or what would you implement in the future if you go after again, maybe next year or a year or two?
So what I'm going to do next year is I am going to give myself longer prep. I did Worlds. I was a bit lost this year because, I had a lot of trouble with a sickness leading up to Worlds. Go out, Tyler. I had a lot of sickness leading up to Worlds. I did Worlds. Obviously, I wasn't very happy with my performance, but it couldn't really have been helped because I was sick for like 6 or 7 weeks building up to it.
Okay.
So I decided I wanted to do this max deadlift, and I gave myself like 3.5, 4 months, which, Eddie and Thor gave themselves a year. And a year is a flipping long time. Like, I can't even grasp being so addicted to one lift for 12 months. So I just feel like if I don't hurt myself, touch wood, if I don't hurt myself, I'm not going to get any weaker really between now and the new year. So I was going to do Glasgow, maybe do Britain's Strongest Man, and then look at just knuckling down and getting for this deadlift. Try and come in maybe a little bit heavier. I think I was weighing like anywhere between like 152 kilos to 154 kilos, which weirdly for me, when I want to get bigger, that isn't that heavy. My biggest, I was 168 kilos.
Wow.
So I actually thought when I was stopped doing the events, stopped running around, stopped doing my cardio, my weight would bump up. But my body weight changed because my diet was very, very good, but I didn't really change much in weight. So in terms of the training, like I think everything was on point. I'll maybe add in some extra hamstring work, but I've even thought about maybe starting the beginning of the prep using an axle because axle is it's very taxing on the hamstrings. So it might be that we start on a stiff bar to begin with. I don't know, but I've got lots of different choices, ideas, and I think really the hard thing is I could pull 470 and it's a 35 kilo gap. But realistically, my max PB is not 470. It's more of a question mark. What is it? What could I have pulled? So I confidently would say I pull 490. So I've got to find 15 kilos. Who knows? I might pull a bit more, but like the gap isn't as big as it actually looks on paper. And I just think more time is essentially it. I'm pretty sure that if you could literally have followed my path from the start to the finish, you could see where it was going. You could see I was getting stronger all the time. I had a groin injury for 2 years, which was a big problem. So this prep, I was actually able to squat pretty heavy, which I think is important for deadlift. And like next year, if I give myself 7-8 months and I can squat heavy from the start, then already I'm light years ahead of this prep we've just done. So I've basically done 2 deadlift peak preps, and this year I reckon I've put about 40 kilos on my deadlift, which for us is unheard of. If I chuck 10 kilos at you now and say there's 10 kilos on your deadlift, you'll be very happy. I almost can't grasp how amazing it's been to just throw so many kilos on a lift. I've been scraping trying to get kilos on the log lift for years. And you know how hard it is. But I've definitely not reached my peak. I mean, I'm 38 end of the year. I just still feel like I'm getting stronger.
Well, hopefully you can pick up some tips from Rano, who keeps getting stronger as he gets older, and especially in his deadlift. So I imagine if you keep at it. But I think that's a pretty good plan. So it sounds like you probably do, instead of a 16-week prep, you probably do maybe a 20 to 24-week prep going into next year, which would make it pretty interesting. So probably similar to someone that like Ivan Markov was probably doing. He probably does it all year round. But it would be pretty interesting.
I mean, I've been invited to this. There's a contest in Germany, December the 2nd, and Ivan's apparently attempting it again there. So
wow,
he really has no off season. I think that's half his problem. Biomechanically, out of most of the athletes I've faced, he is the most built for deadlift. Um, so I just don't know what's going on with his training. Um, he'll pull 1,000 pounds pretty fast, comfortable, maybe for reps. And then like this year, he didn't even get 505 going. It was a bit of a surprise. So
As I think while I was watching the tape, he forgot to buckle his lever belt, and so pretty much was attempting the world record without pretty much doing it beltless. I think that's what I saw if I look back at the footage.
I've heard stuff like that, but like I'm not being funny. I mean, if my belt wasn't on properly, I would know about it. So I really don't understand. Like it's not difficult. If his belt's not on, you would know. Um, and if he'd realised, then why didn't he ask to go again? Like there was no mention from him about his belt. That was all done from viewers. So there was no talk about belt when I was there. Um, there was a bit of a kerfuffle. I don't know what it was portrayed like online, but I pulled 470, and obviously them two skipped, and then they were asking me to come out and do 505, and I'd literally not even fully took my suit off yet, and I was like, "Can they not go first?" And I felt like it was a little bit unsporting of them both. They both said no. They wanted the order to stay the same. They wanted me to go out first. And I just felt like it was a bit unreasonable. So I asked the crowd for 10 minutes. But, realistically, I probably needed 25 minutes between them two lifts. But I felt ready when I got up. I'm not going to give an excuse. I was ready to go for it. But, that was all going on. People coming and going, trying to get them to go out, and they were saying no. And I just wanted to focus on the lift. But I actually assumed that they would be going out first before me because I'd just done in the last lift. So it was a bit messy. But, like Darren did his best. Darren came straight over to me and said, take as long as you need. But when you're sat there and everybody's waiting for you, it's a bit weird. And I kind of don't have the personality or the ego to make everybody wait 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I waited as long as I could, and then I was like, I have to get up and do it. I couldn't wait any longer. So.
Well, that was a lot of great insight. Of course, a lot of stuff that you probably wouldn't see just from watching. So, of course, appreciate all that information. But I do also want to talk a little bit about kind of your early days. Of course, many listeners probably don't know that, of course, you were 105 kilo when you originally started Strongman. So how many competitions did you compete at 105 kilo?
I did quite a few. It was. I would probably say I competed close to 20 times under 105, even if it wasn't a 105 contest. I maybe did other contests at 105. But yeah, that was 2010, and I started in 2010, got a taster for it, and then in 2011, I think I won pretty much every 105 comp. I entered. Towards the end, actually, started to question where I was going with it. Because no disrespect to the guys, but at the time, I was a bit unchallenged. Like back in 2011, I was throwing up like 170, 180 logs, and like that's still good now. I was probably a bit ahead of my time. World's 105 wasn't really a thing back then. So I did my last 105 show March of 2012, and just decided it was a bit more pushed, really, actually, for my wife. But we decided that I would move up and challenge myself, because only thing I kept thinking was I looked at the likes of Terry, looked at the likes of Lawrence, and I just thought, obviously, the first thing I think is height. I'm 5'10", 178 centimeters. If people work in that measurement, I'm not tall. And straight away, I put a barrier up. I'm like, I'm not tall enough, and I'm not strong enough, and I'm not big enough. But I had to challenge myself, and yeah, my 105 days really just became a thing of the past real fast because I got a lucky break. I managed to get an invite to a qualifier, which got me to the Britons that they first started running again with Darren and Colin. And I got first reserve for Worlds, and then I ended up at Worlds. So really, in my second year, well, third year, if you will, at Strongman, coming from lightweight, I was at World's Strongest Man. It was really wild. Back then, my static strength wasn't. Well, I wasn't known for being statically strong. I was known for being a good log lifter. But, I wasn't statically strong. I was known for just being fast because obviously I was a lightweight strongman, so I could move well. I used to always win loading races, or at least top two. I was pretty good with yokes. If I could grip the farmers, I was all right with farmers. But yeah, it's weird. It was like it was never a planned stepping stone. I never thought I would be where I am or be on this journey. It was a hobby I picked up after realizing I could compete at this body weight. When I started, I was basically 105 when I started. And to stay at that weight become a real challenge because obviously I started getting into it 2 years into it, started getting bigger.
Now, how much weight did you gain that first year of going from 105 into the open class?
So obviously there's a bit of a deception. I would often weigh between 115, 120 towards the end of my 105 career. I think I was 118 the day before my last contest. I did a 13 kilo weight cut. But yeah, I very quickly got up to 130. I remember me and my wife went on holiday, and I remember walking on the beach, and I was like, God, I feel so heavy, and that was 130 kilos, but it was the heaviest I've ever been. And it was the same every time, I got to 140, I felt terrible. 150, felt terrible. And then obviously you adjust, you maybe drop in weight a little bit, but you adjust. And I always feel like when I'm over 150, I'm not the best strongman. But that's when I get very strong. So, I think if I was to be a good strongman again, I'd have to be in the mid 140 ranges. Height as well, there's only so much you can put on your frame before it starts getting in its own way.
Interesting. That's some interesting insight. Of course, I remember having Bish on, and Bish said that he kind of struggled to put on weight, and compared to you, who kind of just were able to kind of gain weight pretty fast. Do you have any recommendations when it comes to putting on that kind of weight for anybody, maybe like myself, who's going from 105 kilo into the open class?
Yeah, I think, we're all different. So me, you and Adam, we're genetically different. I never really trained heavy before I started strongman. I used to play a lot of football, soccer. And then obviously when that became my addiction as well as hobby, I just couldn't stop growing. And it wasn't even like I was trying to eat. I only ever ate when I'm hungry. And that's still the same now is, I don't ever force feed. I eat when I'm hungry. I pretty much have just 3 staple meals a day, maybe a pre-post workout meal, maybe a snack, but it's never excessive. Um, I always get asked to do a day of eating, and I always think these people are going to be bored. It's just an average man's day of eating. It's not. Sometimes, like, I'm not hungry. My wife's having a dinner, and I think I probably should have my dinner. It's just the way we are. Adam obviously has a different kind of metabolism to me. I know Adam has to do a lot more work in terms of trying to put body weight on. But like I one time was trying to do it, and I got up to nearly 170 kilos, and it was a very, very unhealthy mess. I was getting up and having, I think the guy had me eating like almost 1,500 to 2,000 calories just for breakfast. And I remember I'd get up, eat breakfast, and I just wanted to go back to bed. I went to eat and sleep. I basically was turning into a sumo wrestler, like eat, sleep. I wanted to eat and then sleep, but then, I've got to train. And even training was hard work. I just couldn't be bothered. So, we all have our thresholds, but yeah, I think you just gotta know your own body. And for me, I have worked with nutritionists over the years, and I always end up reverting back to what I know and eating in the habits that I know best. Um, if I want to put weight on, I know how to put weight on. If I want to lose weight, it isn't difficult. I know I've tried it. I know how to lose weight. So, I think sometimes people just got to take a bit of responsibility in knowing your own body. Um, and getting guidance and help is, of course, is going to help. I said, but essentially, it's down to you to know what you need. And for me, I just probably 4,000 calories a day is enough. But for Adam, he'll probably turn anorexic if he ate that.
So I've also had the likes of like Kevin Ferris on the podcast, and of course I started when I started Strongman, like me and Rob Kearney are from the same state, so I've had of course talked to or dealt with other 105s that made the weight jump, and it's interesting kind of hearing everybody's different kind of process. Like Kevin has a struggle getting over 130 kilos or feeling good over 130 kilos. I remember his journey. He was doing a Ben and Jerry's pint every night in order to gain the weight. And then I think Rob's was a little more smoother. But I think he got up to his heaviest weight at the Arnold this past year when he hit 140 kilos. But I think for any former 105, I think you take the cake in terms of getting up to 170. I think that's the most I ever heard from a former 105 going to the Open. So I imagine when you were 170, is that when you were strict pressing the big logs?
It was actually, yeah. I mean, it obviously when I did my powerlifting meet, I think I weighed 163 kilos. When we came back, and I decided I wanted to do this log lift, it was a prolonged thing because of COVID. Europe was meant to be March, April time, and I was really good for 230 back then. There was a session, and I really wish it got recorded. It's the best log session in history, and it was never recorded. I put up a 220 kilo log in one session, 2 weeks out from Europe's, and COVID hit, so Europe's got cancelled. So I think I ended up doing it outside in a castle 5 months later, and obviously just progressively got a bit more out of shape. And I picked up niggles along the way. So, I had a bad wrist, I had a bad knee, and just kept prolonging the training because I wanted to go for the record. Just wasn't meant to be. And unfortunately, I've never been near it since, really. Actually, since I've tore my bicep, I've never really pushed my log. Never had to. You know, I mean, I've not really had max log in a show and had a decent amount of prep time to sort of say, right, let's get to work and work on bits I need to work on, because, you know, I haven't push pressed for years. Um, that's another ongoing issue that I need to rectify. But
Mm.
you know, I've got away with strict pressing for a lot of my career, and I know if I've got jelly legs on the day, I can rely on my shoulders. So yeah, it's the thing is for me, like if I go under 150 kilos, um, I'm in pretty good shape. You know, like I can see my abs. Um, I'm not like a fat mess. You know, I put on a lot of decent muscle over the years. But you know, I start getting over 155 kilos, and all that starts to disappear. You know, start just looking like a big round man. I remember having a picture. Well, I've actually got a picture still on my phone. It's a bit of a reminder. I had a front, back, side picture of me when I was 168 kilos, and I said, "Never again am I going to look like that." Yeah.
Now,
So,
now, speaking of the log, though, of course with Glasgow coming up, do you think you'll end up strict pressing, or you think you'll try to work in the push press a little bit?
um, I'll just give you a little bit of insight as to why this has
Sure.
happened. So when I hurt my groin, obviously I carried on training. I carried on trying to compete. Um, as a result, I ended up with really bad knees, um, loads of imbalances in my legs, and I just kept training around it. All that seems to be fixed, but the problem I've got is, or the problem I'm really worried about, is if I try and push press a 200 kilo log, and my knee's going to snap off because
Mm.
I haven't done it for years. So I probably need to start very low and do it over time. You know, so realistically, I ain't push pressing come Glasgow. I am actually going to do a session tomorrow. Part of the plan is I'm going to try and do some very light push presses with the log, because it's actually my upper body day, but I'm going to do a little bit because I just want to know in myself where I am with it, if I can still do it. Um, but yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, because if I could probably strict 210, 220, why risk my knees?
Mm.
I can work on that for next year. You know, it's the growing did a real number on me. Um, you know, it probably should have been a career ender. I'm just so stubborn. Last year, when I pulled £1,000 at Cardiff, I was the almost the weakest person in my gym on leg press,
Wow.
because my groin hurt that bad. Um, and you know, like it was there was some serious like things that I could not do. I couldn't do a body weight lunge, but I pulled £1,000, and I did the whole show. I did a log lift, I did loading, I did stones, but there was just some simple things, that functional things that I couldn't do, and I knew at some point it was going to have to get sorted. Um, and really, actually, since Worlds, this whole deadlift training has helped me fix all that. You know, like my body feels really good. I just need to get back to doing events again. You know, I actually had my baptism of fire day yesterday, where I did. Um, I don't know if you saw the post. I did a 250 axle for 12.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for 2 sets, and then I did 2 loading races, and I did sets of 8s on stones, and I was so tired afterwards. I mean, that I think I haven't gone over like anything fundamentally over 5 reps for months. You know, the whole session was rep, rep, rep,
Mm-hmm.
rep, rep. Haven't run around with anything either, so I just took it easy with the loading. But I actually surprised myself, because I did the loading, and I thought, well, I haven't done any cardio or any sorts for such a while. I didn't even think I'd finish it, but I finished it, and I did it again. Obviously I could be faster, but it was a nice start. I'm not as out of shape as I thought I was.
Oh, interesting. But it looks like, I think for the most part. So I was actually going to ask a little bit in terms of kind of your strict pressing power. What do you think is of course, the great benefit, or not the great benefit, but the reason behind it? If it's the volume, the frequency, your technique around it. But it sounds like it was just you kind of went to it as your kind of main lift because you're trying to avoid any more damage to your knees and, of course, your lower extremities.
Yeah, yeah. I think if I didn't have the strict press power I have, I would definitely have tried to rectify this sooner. But because I was okay, I kind of just rolled with strict pressing. Um, it's frustrating in a way because when I am good at push pressing, I was very good, and then obviously I have the lockout strength. Um, it would be nice to surprise myself and everybody to just turn up and push press and log, because nobody's expecting it. But never say never. I'm always learning. I'm always wanting to improve myself, and when I can't do something, it bothers me. It bothers me a lot. So like if I can't push press a log, definitely know that at some point I'm going to want to do something about it. I just don't know if I've got enough time. Realistically, we've got like 4 weeks of training. I did a 190 log this week. It was fairly comfortable, but still, I was still feeling tired from the show. I'm I'm nowhere near 230 log. I don't feel
Now,
like I am anyway.
Now, how heavy will your last log be before Glasgow? And that would that be like 2 weeks out? When do you normally take that
Yeah,
last log before the
so I
contest?
think the plan for me now, as I'm structuring it, is just to add 5 kilos onto my log each week, and then do 3 sets of three drop downs. So next week I'll be doing a 195 log. Um, I assume I'll probably finish around 210, all being well. Um, and that's 210 clean and strict. So, but yeah, we'll just see. I am going to try tickle push pressing, but if I'm struggling to push press a 150 log, then I should just park it and work on it on the off season. It's not something that I'm going to fix in 4 weeks. Um, it's a really weird one. Like it's so hard to explain. Like I was showing this to Luke Stoltman. He probably doesn't even remember this conversation, but last year I did like a quarter squat, and then I almost couldn't stop. I had to like hold on to something because there was no brakes in my knees because the VMOs in my legs had gotten so weak. I couldn't stop. Like I could do a full squat. If I had to stop, I couldn't. So how am I
Interesting.
going to push if I can't do that? I don't think it's an injury anymore. I think it's more it was a weakness, and obviously it's a big mental thing. Because I've avoided it for so long. I probably just need to get doing it again and build the confidence up again because, like like I say, I just get scared of hurting myself because I don't want to be going in and training with a 100 kilo log. It's too boring for me. You
Ab- Absolutely. But I did want to of course, touch a little more on log. Of course, you've had some really big cleans in the past. Of course, you clean 220, almost clean 230 back at that Europe Strongest Man competition back in 2020. But do you have any recommendations? Because I struggle on the clean sometimes, especially getting over 180, 190. Do you have any recommendations on how to like kind of bulletproof your log clean? Do you think it's more on technique or is it more on volume and accessories, and or do you have a fundamental philosophy around how to execute a heavy log clean?
yeah, I mean, it was a weird one for me because I always thought my clean was flawless, and I never really failed a log clean. And then I started to. I actually think it was more mental. But for me, one big thing is elbow sleeves. If you've got too tight an elbow sleeve, you can't follow through your drive with your arms as much. That was one thing that I picked up on. And I think it affects the smaller guy more than the bigger guy, because obviously if your arms are shorter and you've got a tight sleeve on, you just can't hinge the same. So I never really wear a tight elbow sleeve. Quite often you'll see me not even wear any. And the other thing I found with me was I would forget to squeeze my glutes at the top of the clean. That was where I fell short with the 230. I only realised it in training months after, that I used to rely on the sheer speed from the bottom to get to the top. And I couldn't realise that I wasn't carrying on with my glute drive all the way up. And when that finally clicked, like even now when I'm in the gym and I clean the log, it's not slowing down. I've failed a 190 log clean many a times in the past, trying to fix my clean and play around my clean. Obviously, angle of the log, as you probably know, is important. But yeah, for me, it was always my glute drive. If you've got weak glutes, you struggle with the clean, especially at top end big heavyweights. You need strong glutes.
Interesting. I think I haven't really thought about that cue, but of course it makes a lot of sense. I'll give it a little bit of a practice. But of course that's all really big insights. Now, are you a big component of, like, for instance, like heavy front squats are going to be helpful for cleans, or is there any kind of accessory movements where you think that would pair up for like heavy cleans?
Just drilling the movement, mate. Like I don't think I'm always a big believer of not doing anything too fancy. You know what I mean? Like when people talk to me about deadlift, like, how can you prove your lockout? How can you prove it off the floor? The movement's A to B. Practice the movement A to B. You get stronger at A to B. You'll have a weakness A to B, and I have one. We'll always fail somewhere along that path. So for me, just train the movement. Unless there's fundamentally something very, very wrong or missing, training log is the simplest way. Like if I took the log away from you and got you to go away and do a lot of gym training, train your glutes, train your quads, train your push press on a bar, blah, 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 you're not actually going to get better at log, are you? You might get stronger, but essentially to get better at log, you need to log. But I always believe that the strength is built in the gym. So yeah, front squat, back squat. To be honest, any kind of squat, as long as you've got strong legs. But I always believe that your strength is built in the gym. And for me, log is more of a technique session. I don't look at log or go to train log to get stronger. I train it more as a technique. Like I could probably not train log for 6 months and have a couple of sessions and I'll be at my best within a few sessions, because my strength's built in the gym. That's how I look at it anyway, whether that's right or wrong, but that's my view.
That's a great insight. So of course, appreciate sharing that. And then the last piece, just talking about Glasgow. How do you? I see that you're competing in the full show. How do you feel about the rest of the events at the show?
Find me a rope. Yeah. I'm not going to say I regret it, but it's going to be very, very tough month for me. You've got 2 moving events in there. You've got kind of a light deadlift for reps as well, and then a max log. So it's a bit of a mix for me. Like if I was wanting to come in and try and do a very big log, then I probably wouldn't want to do the rest of the show. But I kind of do. I want to do the whole show. The events, they're not great for me. But if you're going to spend your career avoiding shows because you don't like the events, you're never going to do any contests. And there's that many athletes now. They'll just invite somebody else. So it's like I say, it's a whole baptism of fire. Like I've just thrown myself in there. I've just done it. Can you imagine Eddie Hall pulling 500 and then doing a comp a month later, which involved him doing a lot of running around?
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't have done it, But I kind of want to do it to prove it to myself that I can. I want to be able to adapt that fast, and we'll see. I mean, I might be a complete disaster, but I don't look at the steeplechase and think I'm being realistic. Even if I was in shape and I've been training all year, I probably ain't going to beat Tom Stoltman at a steeplechase, or Pablo, or Mitch. But as long as I don't fail it and I manage to finish it and I do myself justice, then I'm happy. And it's a stepping stone for me because Britain's strongest man's probably going to be in January. Might as well start now. Get in shape now. Yeah, the events are what they are. You don't enjoy running around until you're good at it, which is like a lot of events. If you're bad at an event, you don't enjoy it. So it is what it is. There's events in there that I don't like. So what? I'm going to go and do them anyway.
Well, either way, I think myself and many others will be pretty excited when, of course, you step on the stage on October 28th. So of course, kind of in terms of kind of moving on to some other questions, I see that you're offering coaching now. So, of course, if you guys are interested, you guys can go to grahamhicks.co.uk. And also be in the description below if you guys are interested in this coaching. But usually these days in the world of strongman, when you're mentoring young athletes, what is usually the most common advice you give them?
I say this all the time: patience. If if I had a pound for everyone that tells me that they're going to add 50 kilos to the deadlift in a year, or they're going to be at Worlds in 2 years, or patience, and I guess just try and be a bit more grounded and realistic about your goals, because like no one can sit down and say, right, I'm going to be there in 12 months when you've just started. You've just it's a long journey, and on that journey you might have change of job, change of relationship, life stuff. And it's the life stuff for me that's the biggest variable. It's the most uncontrollable variable. Like a lot of people don't realize that, they know I have 3 kids, but we actually care for my wife's sister as well. So technically we have 4. And then they're variables that kind of come before me because I'm a father. So you've got to be patient, like it's a long game. And I try and explain that to all my clients, like if you sign up with me, know that I'm thinking about longevity. I'd never really get guys to max out. A lot of them get not bored, but a little bit impatient at times with me because it's like I'm trying to build a good base with them, trying to make sure that they're lifting right, and just trying to keep them level-headed about their direction and their goals. I've been coaching actually for a very long time. I don't plug it crazy amounts because sometimes I get a bit overwhelmed.
Sure.
2 years ago, I had so many clients. I was so snowed under, and now it's a different story because a lot of people are doing it. So like everyone's getting spread out a little bit more evenly. But I do enjoy it, and I'm very passionate about it. But yeah, like I always, if it's something that I could title myself, or I should probably come up with a slogan, but it's patience. Like when I've been injured in the past, patience has got me through it, as well as being, positive. But patience is definitely the biggest key in this sport. If you're not patient, you're not going anywhere.
This is of course great advice and very common advice I've seen, of course, across some of the other big names I've come across the podcast. But we've been pretty positive this podcast so far. But sometimes there's things that get under our skin when it comes to the world of strongman. So, and when we talk about the world of strongman, is there anything that grinds your gears? Is there not just non-static events, but just in the training methodologies or individuals running conjugate or different methods within strongman? Is there anything that grinds your gears when you see out when you're watching or looking at different aspects of strongman?
I, I don't go online enough because when I do go online, my gears get grinded. I get grinded by a lot of lightweight strongman now. Because I can relate because I was a lightweight strongman, and I never once was like I lifted 3.5 times body weight. You know, who cares? And that's one thing that does annoy me. And I just think as well sometimes people talk too much. They're constantly trying to just sell themselves. They talk so much shit that they believe that they even believe that what they're saying is true. I just think sometimes people just try and oversell themselves by talking a load of rubbish, and that annoys me. So I think sometimes, like going back as I mentioned earlier, like simple usually is the most effective. There's nothing ever complicated in my programming. I try and keep it simple. If it's not simple, then the client can't understand it. The client's not going to follow it. The client's not going to enjoy it. If I give you a diet that's so complicated each meal that you have to cook it, you can't even grasp what the diet is. You're not going to follow it. You've got to. It's the same with training, and it's the same with strongman. Like I feel like when people try and overcomplicate things, I get really annoyed because I sit here saying simplify things. The simplest things work, and then I go on my phone and you get everyone singing, dancing about posh words that half the people don't even know what mean. That annoys me. But yeah, I think the whole body weight thing really does tick me off probably the most, because I've been there, and I was never as good as I was. I'm more impressed about what I've done now at a bigger body weight because I've shifted more weight, and end of the day, that's what strength is. It's about lifting. It's who lifts the most weight. It's not, like if I pull 505, I'm not going to sit on the microphone and go, I pulled this at 154 kilos. Thor was 208. Eddie was 200. I'm stronger. No, I'm stronger because I lifted more weight. It's not about what body weight. It is something that does annoy me, but people do it, and I understand why they do it. It's seen as more impressive, but I just get really tired of it because it's kind of like a thing that's growing. One person does it, another one does it, now everyone starts doing it.
When I was
yeah,
when I
that's
would go
probably top
after
of the list.
when I would go after my records and I was adjusting, kind of, for instance, like what I do pound for pound for what an open class competitor does pound for pound, I always would usually adjust it like 10 to 20%. Like, for instance, maybe this lift was 80% over my body weight compared to an open competitor that only did 20% over their body weight. But I always adjusted it because the heavier you get, because you're focusing on multiple implements and multiple techniques. So as the heavier you get, the more efficient you're going to get. Just because let's just say you put certain individuals will put on 10, 20 kilos just to be a good deadlifter, but there's also the component of building your chest and shoulders for the upper body. So I would always keep that in mind of like adjusting it towards maybe, like, for instance, if I was maybe the lift I did might have been more impressive or not, but I would give potentially the heavyweight 10 or 20% more just because they are facing some efficient deficiencies. But sometimes, like, for instance, when I always said, and I'm not sure if I ever got shit for this, but for instance, like looking at Brian Shaw, I always said Brian should have been the world record holder in the log press because just because of for how big his stature was. I always felt like he never really got pushed at times. It may not have been something that he was really interested in, but I felt just given the size, if he was just 20% more efficient in his body weight, then he would have easily hit a record, and he would hit 230 and above. So I always kind of sometimes look at that, maybe just more of a fan of, I want to see big weights from big guys, or maybe just holding my idols to a higher degree of scrutiny. But I think I've kind of been sometimes maybe on both sides of the end. But as I'm older, I'm probably looking at items more like you in terms of sometimes the pound for pound discussion gets a little out of hand.
It does, you know what I mean? Like I got it from a lot of Jamal's fans. I saw, because I read a lot of the comments. As impressive as 470 was, Jamal was pound for pound the strongest deadlifter there, and I'm just like, just shoot me now, you know. He's a great athlete. I'm not knocking him, but I want to stand up and say, I got the trophy, I took it home, I was the strongest deadlifter there. No one gives two shits about pound for pound in the World Deadlift Championships, and you know, it just, I always find the pound for pound thing is used to undermine someone else's achievement. So rather than say well done Hicksy, they want to go on and say something negative, which is pound for pound, you weren't the strongest there. Why not just show? Like, I just don't get it, and you're never going to get rid of it. They're always going to be there. But I think that's why I think I've grown to hate the pound for pound thing so much, is because it gets thrown at the direction of somebody who's achieved something, and people try and undermine it by playing the pound for pound card. And I just think it's used so wrongly that I've come to hate it so much.
Interesting, of course, aspect, but
makes sense.
Yeah, but that was a good addition of what grinds your gears. So, kind of rounding out the podcast. So, when we talk just about kind of strongman goals and all, so when everything's all said and done, what are you looking to accomplish in the sport of strongman?
Obviously, now I've changed my focus to pulling this deadlift, because it was an idea. I 50-50 in my head back in April was like, I think I have the ability. I think I can do it. It was always I think or I believe. After, you know, after Cardiff, it's not I think or I believe anymore. It's I know. I know I can do this. And I'm going to kick myself for the rest of my life if I don't give it a good go, because, you know, it's something that, for me, as a person, as a profile, as an athlete, it can really spiral me into somewhere where I'm never going to get by strongman shows. You know, I could literally go away in the history books as one of the strongest men that ever lived. You know, and I'm not just a deadlifter. You know, I can press, I can squat, and you know, on my day, there's not many people in the world that can keep up with me on their movements. And that's why I like, Colin actually said it to me. He said, "This is Colin Bryce." He's like, the most surprising thing for him was biomechanically, I am not actually built for deadlifts, and he's not wrong. You know, I'm probably built for squatting, but I'm a very good presser, and I've worked very hard on my deadlift, and now I'm, you know, arguably the best deadlifter in the world right now.
No, excellent. So, will we see potentially someone that wins the deadlift world championships and the log world championships in the same year? Who knows? But I think that would be a pretty cool feat.
Log, I think, yeah, it would be nice. it would be nice to win the log. I mean, um, I think it's a very tall order for me, just because I haven't done. I was training log um, as part of the deadlift build up, and then I made a decision that I think it would hinder my deadlift progress. So I went from 4 days a week just to 3 days a week for the last 10 weeks.
Hmm.
So yeah, I took away the log press training. Um, Obviously now I'm sat here kind of regretting it a little bit, because that's 10 weeks where I could have been training it, even if it was light. It was a decision I made because I was rooting for the deadlift. Had I pulled it, it was a good decision. But like, it would be nice to win both. If I'm not going to win both this year, then next year it's going to have to be next year. I haven't actually won the log lift champs for I think 8 years, maybe. I've just been when it was at its best. Well, I say that because it was, they did have the log lift when I did the 220, but
Mhm.
it was COVID, so there was no really internationals there to challenge me. But I think 220 would probably have won it that day anyway. But yeah, I haven't actually won the log lift champs for a very long time, and I kind of feel like it does me a bit of an injustice. But like, this time ahead, I mean, people might play the edge card at me, but I always come back to this saying, and I am always going to ride this saying for a while. As
Mhm.
if I was a car with mileage on it, it's not as high as you'd think, because I've had a lot of time out of the sport in my career, when we've had babies, when I've had injuries, and I've just never really pushed myself, even like with the supplements, my body. I've always been very patient, and I think my stronger years are still in front of me. And I think Brownlow is a good example for that.
Mhm.
Like, he probably had 485, 490 in him last year, and he's over 40. I believe I'm going to pull 505 at 38 years old. Um, it's age. There'll become a time, obviously, at some point in my life, where I'm not going to get any stronger, but that isn't yet. So, I think for me to solidify myself, I need to win both the log and the deadlift in the same year. Ideally, both records.
Mhm.
I would like to hold them both at the same time. Uh, but I just feel like these contests are just too close together for me to achieve that. I could be wrong. I mean, yourself, you might be
Mhm.
having a few weeks where you're just not feeling yourself, you're not feeling strong, and then you come in that week and everything just moves. And I'm waiting for that, really. Um,
Mhm.
I'm probably able to chuck up a 200 log right now, and I don't feel very good. So, I'm hoping that I just roll in one Monday in this prep, and a big log ends up being thrown up out of nowhere. But yeah, I think we'll just have to see. And the potential's there in me, but I just don't know if I've got enough time. And obviously, with me trying to do all the other events, it is going to hinder a max log to some degree, because I'm trying to get fitter, a bit lighter. So that probably could potentially affect my press, but we'll just see. I just want to keep smiling, keep enjoying it, and not hurt myself anymore. I've been injured too many times for too long. Um, it's just so nice to be able to get out of bed in the morning, nothing hurting, and that's a pretty important factor in this sport. Like, it's not very common that most of us can say that, but generally at the moment, for at least the past few months, apart from my hamstring problem, I've been feeling really good in my body. Um, I actually can't. I feel like the clock's actually been rewinding. It's crazy. So yeah, the future for me is bright. But for the main goal next year will be to try and podium at Britain's Strongest Man, and then solely focus on deadlift and probably log, and
Now,
just be
now
the static king that I want to be.
Now, I'll be rooting for you either way. So you think you might, for instance, if you got the invite for Worlds, you might forego Worlds to pursue the deadlift?
100%. Yeah, I probably won't be going. It all depends really on the prize money as well next year. Obviously, Colin joked with me about doubling it, but like that's life-changing money for us. I'm not a rich person by any means. Like if I won that money, it'd be life-changing for us. But it's a weird one because I'm not actually motivated by money. I do it because I like lifting. I just love lifting. I love training. I love competing. I feel like if I was motivated by money, I probably still wouldn't be doing it. This is like my 13th year. It's not really the sport to get in if you're trying to make money. Let's be honest.
No, it's not.
So,
well, of course, I do appreciate.
Times have changed lately. A lot of the shows. Sorry. There's a bit of a time difference there. A lot of the shows now, there's a lot more money involved. Only if you're winning. I always used to say this. It's still a little bit top heavy. The lower end guys are still having to work very hard for our money. So
yeah, and of course,
square daddy is now.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll wrap this up. But I appreciate, of course, taking the time. So if you guys are listening, if you're interested in following Graham's journey, so I'll put his Instagram and also YouTube down below in the description. But I appreciate taking the time today. Kind of speak with you. A lot of great insight, especially on the deadlifts. A lot of things that I even overlooked myself, that even when watching and looking at it, of course, more from the audience. But I do appreciate the time, and of course, best wishes, and hopefully get to meet you soon over the pond or over this direction here in the US.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not that much of a jet setter. I don't go abroad much anymore. Obviously, it's hard getting sitters. I mean, that's all personal life stuff. But it's difficult for us. If we go away, it needs planning months in advance. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. So I'm sure we'll meet eventually.
Absolutely. But thank you, Graham. That's all for today, guys. Of course, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, notification bell. And until next time, stay strong.